What better way to prepare for the 2023 Major League Rugby season than chatting a little fantasy rugby with friend of the show, Andrew Coe of the now Rugby New York Ironworkers. The big question is, though, who is he going to convince to draft him for this upcoming season? Fantasy Ruckers Show starts right now.
Where rugby and the world of fantasy sports collide. Welcome to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, talking all things rugby from the MLR to leagues around the world. We're on top of it. Headphones on, pads off. This is the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Yee, Matt Yee, and Devin Vanderpool.
What's up, everybody? This is episode number 49 of the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Thank you so much to our Fantasy Ruckers League members, our community members, and everyone else tagging along on this journey of trying to make fantasy rugby a reality in the MLR. As always, Matt Yee is with me. I'm Ryan Yee. Super excited for the 2023 Fantasy MLR season. And Matt, it's quickly approaching, man. We are less than a month away from opening weekend.
Yeah, I mean, hey, look, I got to get to the draft first. That's the first thing on my mind right now. I'm not even thinking about opening weekend. All I've got is preparation, and sticky notes. That's all I need. That's all I need for this draft. That's all I'm thinking about, one step at a time.
Yeah, one step at a time. But yeah, you've definitely been putting in the work so far. It serves
Mhm.
you right, man. After I guess a disappointing 2022 season, it's only up from here. We've mentioned it throughout the episodes up to this point. We're expecting big
Yeah.
improvements from you, Maddie, and I think you're definitely putting in the work. Whether or not that's going to show up
Hey,
on the stat line in the
yeah,
fantasy
we
rugby
talked
world, who knows?
we talked about this and we talked about this in the past episodes. I'm getting 1% better every season. If I can get to seventh place this year, I'm happy. Because in 7 years' time, oh, you just wait. My name's gonna be on that jersey. This thing's gonna be huge. Everybody's gonna be winning, especially me.
Yeah, so make sure, within the decade, Matthew will have his name on the
Yes,
official Fantasy Ruckers
I guarantee.
championship jersey that is behind me. But yeah, super fun stuff. Fantasy MLR is just around the corner. Things are starting to ramp up. Our league members are getting ready. It's super exciting. Whole bunch of stuff going on around the MLR, getting
Mhm.
prepared for the 2023 year. We got preseason matchups coming. Got a whole bunch of stuff. But you heard at the top of the show in our teaser, we do have friend of the show, 2022 MLR champion coming on to talk a little bit of fantasy rugby and more, and his thoughts heading into the 2023 year. That is Andrew Coe. He'll be hopping on here.
Oh
We got
yeah.
to speak to him earlier this week. Super exciting stuff, and it's cool to always talk with a guy that has a little bit of insight into MLR as it continues to grow and continues to become a bigger thing here in North America.
And you know what? I think we kicked off last season, our inaugural season, with Ko. So Ko's an OG friend of the show. He's been there from the beginning. There's no better way to kick off the 2023 year as we start preparing for this draft with another interview of Ko, get his thoughts, get everything he needs. And you know what? The bonus plus of having that interview was we got to see our boy Vandy, right?
Yeah, Vandy is not here today, and unfortunately, he's tied up with some other stuff here. But yeah, we always miss the guy. But nonetheless, I feel like he also maybe uses that as an excuse. And he's actually doing some extra work. He knows the
Oh,
work
yeah.
that you're already putting in, Maddie, for this fantasy rugby season. He's like, you know what? I got to
Oh,
do
yeah.
double time to make sure that this guy doesn't beat me. I know there's a competitive nature
Yep.
between you two, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's back at home cracking at the numbers for fantasy rugby, preparing for a draft that is, I guess, less than a month away here.
Hey,
I wouldn't be
and
surprised if
and
that's the
not
case.
just off the field stuff. Remember, he's also preparing for that Chicago Hounds open tryout. He's
We
getting
did talk
ready.
about that.
He's running his sprints. I don't care if we got the likes. I'm pretty sure he's showing up there. But somehow he was able to make time for the one and only Andrew Coe. I don't blame him.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if I saw him at the opening combine at that late January thing that the Chicago Hounds are hosting. But yeah, nonetheless, he was able to join us this week when we did speak with Andrew Coe. A super fun conversation. We're going to get to that in just a moment's time here. But a little bit of housekeeping here. Fantasy MLR is
Always.
continuing to grow, continuing to get messages from the MLR community as a whole, seeing posts online and things like that about the interest about fantasy rugby and establishing a fantasy rugby league in the MLR. Unfortunately, still, we're working hard. The Fantasy Ruckers Workshop, we got the people working, we got the ideas brewing, and we're trying to make it a reality, like we said at the top, for as many people as possible in the MLR community and beyond. And again, the way you're going to find out when that does happen is by following us on socials at Fantasy Ruckers on Twitter, at the Fantasy Ruckers on Instagram. We even got a Discord community as well that has a lot of fun stuff in there. You'll find that link down below in our YouTube channel. And hey, even while you're at it, throw us a like for this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to the Fantasy Ruckers. That's the best way that you're going to be up to date
Yeah, and
with
maybe
everything
maybe
Fantasy
leave a
MLR.
comment, Maybe leave
Yeah,
a comment if you're feeling spicy, you can leave a comment. But hey, Rye, before we move on to anything else, I got to mention this. I've been mentioning it every week about our Discord. The season's coming. It's about to get live in there. If you don't want FOMO, you're going to, you're going to miss out on some good conversation with the boys. You want to be in that Discord for sure because things are about to get crazy in there.
Absolutely. And the Discord community includes prominent members of
Mhm.
the MLR community, guys like James Dealey of MLR Stats. He's joining our league this year. I know he's
Yeah.
already getting some work done for Fantasy MLR. We obviously got a longtime inaugural member, John Fitzpatrick of Rugby Morning in there as well. He's always bringing in the good stuff. His newsletter is always fantastic every single morning. I always like to enjoy that daily email, morning email with a nice cup of coffee there. And then we also have first-time members, Rugby Wrap-Up crew joining as well. Zach Lanning, Matt McCarthy. They were on our show a couple episodes back to finish off that 2022 year. Had a lot of fun talking with them. So all those people are in our Discord community. Like Matthew said, you won't want to miss it. Join the conversation, talk a little fantasy MLR, and be there when we are able to expand this thing. And hey, while you're at it too, you can also give Matt a follow at Ye95 on Twitter and myself at Ryan J. Yee for all the deets on everything fantasy MLR and maybe our picks and things throughout the year. It's always going to be entertaining stuff as well. But nonetheless,
they just get to see more of my toxicness coming out of my typing fingers and my ridiculousness, and who wouldn't want to miss that? So
yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, let's not keep the people waiting. Right. Everyone wants to hear what the legend establishing himself in his first in his first year in the MLR. We were able to talk to him about what he expects in this upcoming season. He says it's a contract year coming up too. So obviously we're going to expect big things, and he's going to try to do some convincing if he hasn't already for a league member in the Fantasy Ruckers League to draft him, and maybe he'll be a vital part about giving that team this Fantasy Ruckers championship jersey and get their name etched on there for the 2023 season. But nonetheless, had that conversation earlier this week between myself, Matt, Vandy, and of course, Andrew Coe. Why don't you guys have a listen, and we'll be right back to break that all down on what we discussed about. No more stalling anymore. Let's get to it right here. We are happy to be joined by friend of the show once again, Andrew Coe of the Rugby New York Ironworkers. Andrew, man, we always love having you on. Former, or I guess the most recent MLR champion. Now you've got a big season ahead for you guys to hopefully go for that repeat, man. How have you been? How's the new year treating you?
It's great. It's so nice to be back. We have a lot of the same guys, so it's coming into a lot of familiar faces, which is amazing. We already built that chemistry through last year, and these first couple weeks, we're trying to get back to that level.
Oh yeah, we talked about that last show. The fact that the fact that you guys have a lot of the same guys, except it's got to be good for a champion team. I mean, we said it last week. Like if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Are there any nerves about a repeat, or are you guys just pretty, let it play out, see where it goes type vibes?
Not really. It's the expectation now. We know we can do it, so it's a matter of going out there and doing it. We understand that championships come once in a while, so we have the moment now. Let's try and seize it and try and make this, into a dynasty.
Hey, dynasty!
Yeah, hey,
I like that.
There we go. That's some big talk there. But hey, if there's anyone that can do it, it's the talent that Rugby New York has. I mean, Matt and I broke it down last episode with what guys you're coming in once again. That consistency of that same roster and that coaching staff that you've now brought into that's had a whole bunch of experience. But yeah, let's break it all down, Co. Let's start off kind of with the off season and how it's been for you. I know we talked to you towards the tail end of the year, but now that you had time to kind of relax. Get back into the groove of things. How has the offseason been for you? How has kind of the build up to this 2023 year been for you after the past few months?
Yeah, it was good. It was the longest time I've ever gone without rugby. So it was, I went out and played some club games. and I played with Canada in the November tour. But other than that, I wasn't in a daily training environment around a team working towards a common goal. It was just kind of on my own to do. And I really enjoyed it. I kind of needed that break. It was a long season, and it's a hell of a slog through whatever 20 weeks, 21 weeks of games. So it was nice to kind of get a little reset mentally, and then go right back into it this year, fully switched on and ready to go.
That's sweet. That's great to hear. The fact that that was your longest stretch of not playing, that's pretty insane, man. It's been go time for you. I mean, it makes sense though. I mean, coming from your sevens background and having all the Olympics happening, and then basically right after that, not too long after signing with Rugby New York and getting, I guess, put into the fire with the whole Major League Rugby scene. That's pretty nuts, man. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was good. It was good to kind of take a step back and think more bigger picture. And the last thing you want to do is burnout, and burnout's a big thing in sports. You can't keep going at this high level all the time. So it was nice to take a step back so that I don't come in and burn out pretty easily.
One of the big things that happened in the offseason, though, as well, was that big, and we have already alluded to it a couple times. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous in my mind, but hey, it is what it is. But the fact that you guys changed your name, I guess, third name change, what else is new? Have you always kind of wanted to be an Ironworker? Was that your dream growing up? Just wanting to be a part of that New York concrete and being part of the this New York skyline?
Yeah. Ever since I could remember, that's for sure.
What a question, eh?
No, but seriously, what do you think of the name, though? What do you think of the name?
It is. We had it all through last year, so we kind of knew that this was coming because that was kind of the mantra that we embodied last year. We called ourselves Ironworkers. Everything. We went to Ironworker facilities to learn about their trades and stuff. So it was not a surprise to us, because we already had that ingrained in the culture that we had.
Oh,
now,
okay.
For did they kind of let you guys in?
Not necessarily, no. Like, I didn't know the name was going to be changed to Ironworkers, but it was kind of the next logical step. I was not surprised and shocked about it.
Oh yeah, because I know, like, the Commanders, when that name went to get changed, they asked a lot of players. Players got to vote. I didn't know if it was a scenario like that or it was just kind of a management top-down thing.
I think it was just kind of the next evolution to the culture that we were kind of building.
Now that you guys got a name, and now that you've enjoyed your time off with Rugby New York, and now entering the season with that name and things like that, what are you most looking forward to 2023? I know you say that you want to run it back with the boys and want to win that championship again. But outside of that, obviously that's everyone's goal heading into the year. But what are you most excited about the 2023 year now that you've kind of completed that rookie season?
I mean, obviously the goal is to win, but you can't really think of it like that. What I love being in New York and why I want to come back here is because of the daily culture. Like, every day we go in, I get to have fun, work hard with my buddies and try and get better. I'm not thinking about the game at the end of the week, the playoffs, lifting the shield again. All I'm thinking about is how can I be best in the day and make that as enjoyable as possible. And that's something that I miss, not being in a daily training environment, is, you're with the boys all the time and you get so close together that, you're essentially brothers going into it. So I'm looking forward to getting back into that and bringing on a couple of new faces as well. So all the new guys have definitely bought into the culture.
You bring up a lot of those new guys, and I mean, I know that you guys had some pretty key some key draft picks, I think a couple, and obviously signed some new guys as well. But what are some of the new guys that you think people should be looking out for kind of coming this season? Who should we be really watching out for some of the fantasy league managers, as well as people that are just watching the MLR?
I mean, it's still pretty early, mate. It's still pretty early, but I will say that we got rid of one Tucker and we picked up another Tucker. So Tux is
All right,
looking pretty speedy out there. I catch him, but that's all right.
all right, there's the interesting plug that our league members will have to listen out to. That's for sure. And then I guess moving forward, I guess towards this new stadium that you're playing at. I saw the pictures. It's pretty exciting. I mean, now the fact that you don't have people playing pickleball in the background at the side courts there, but now a legitimate stadium. How excited are you to kind of have a new home and be able to? I'm sure you've checked it out already.
Yeah. Actually, we haven't seen it yet, but yeah, it's kind of bittersweet because I feel like we really, despite the field not being up to standard last year, we really built a community around Hoboken, and I feel like we were really a part of that and ingrained in what was going on. So it's tough to leave, and I hope that we can still, somehow be connected to Hoboken. But it's also exciting to kind of start our own thing up in Mount Vernon, and it's a stadium that we can build into and grow into, and it's pretty exciting trying to learn what goes on up there, and getting ingrained in that sort of area of the city as well.
I think there's one thing that I know, and obviously it only grows with the championship that you guys won last year. But if there's something I know about, I guess now the Ironworkers faithful, is that whether it's in Hoboken or whether it's in Mount Vernon, there's going to be people that are coming out in droves to come see you guys play, especially with how successful that you guys been. Because it must be amazing to kind of have that followingship and know that whether you're playing in Hoboken or whether you're playing in Mount Vernon, that there are going to be fans there that are going to be cheering for Rugby New York.
Yeah. Our fans are awesome, and it's we're trying to put out the best product that we can. So
absolutely. Absolutely. All right. And then talking about some of, I guess, the developments in this league, because obviously there's going to be ebbs and flows when it comes to Major League Rugby. Obviously, we talked about it in depth last offseason, but we said on this show that we're no longer mentoring those two teams that used to be in the MLR. It's all about looking ahead. So obviously we've added the team of the Chicago Hounds now joining MLR for this 2023 year. Got 12 teams entering the season. There was the whole expansion draft that happened and the dispersal draft. With different players moving to different spots, kind of from a player's perspective, because we haven't really had the chance to talk to a player about this whole situation. Just kind of your overall thoughts about that, how excited maybe you are to play Chicago, and how do you feel especially as the former MLR champion, being a part of the former MLR championship team in 2022, to see how strong the Chicago Hounds team is going to be, with them pulling a lot of the best players from the LA Giltinis and the Austin Gilgronis. They're definitely, at least in our mind, we came up with a predicted 15 that they can put out there, and it is a strong bunch. So seeing the strength that they were able to build coming out of this dispersal drive, what was your opinion on that, and what was kind of your mindset and perspective about that, being a player and especially being a former champion?
Yeah, it was interesting. It was an interesting time. There's a bunch of Canadians on that LA team, so they were a little stressed about the whole situation. But yeah, Chicago is going to be a very good team. I think you lose two teams, but Chicago gets to pick up the best players from those two teams, right? So they're going to be very challenging. I will say I've never been to Chicago before, so I am very excited. We play them in Chicago, and I can't wait to see what type of production they put on out there.
Now, does that make you feel like I don't know what the right word is, but when you see a team, I guess, so easily, right off the get-go, because we obviously saw what happened with the Dallas Jackals, right? It has taken time for them to kind of build their program, and they didn't have the pool of talent available to them to pull from when they initially joined the league. So to see what is your feeling? Is it a feeling of, angry about it? Or you kind of just have to deal with it? Like, what's kind of like seeing a team being that good on paper, right? I know on the field it still has to be, they still have to put something out there, and they haven't shown anything yet or proved anything, but at least on paper it shows that they're going to be pretty solid. So how does that kind of make you feel?
I mean, they'll be very good, but there's also a lot of other good teams out there. I think New
Sure.
England was very good last year, and they picked up a lot of key guys as well. There's a lot of teams that are putting together some really good rosters. So it's not just Chicago that you have to look out for, and they will have a good team. But all the other teams as well have tried to bolster their lineup.
I like the way you handled that. It wasn't like a frustration. It's kind of like, it is what it is. You really can't do much about it. So, to say it again, iron sharpens iron. Like, not even to play not even to play on the Ironworkers, but I mean, it's true. You want to go against great competition because to be the best, you got to beat the best. That's sports. That's
at the end of the day, we do well as players and we get paid more and we, get to live better lives. Not necessarily that we win games, but that the league as a whole does really well.
That's true.
So I'm rooting not only for myself and I want to win and be the best team that I can be, but everyone else as well to put on good productions, get good fans, just boost the league up. Because the better the league is, the more I can get paid because there's more money coming into it and it's all, gravy from there.
I've never ever thought of it like a profit sharing thing, but you're bang on. It kind of is a profit sharing thing. The better you could do, obviously as a player, you want to be your best. That's how you make the most, money if that's the goal. But for it to only increase, all teams have to be good. All teams have to be a certain caliber.
He's already got the championship, Vandy. Now it's all about just cashing in.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think, Co, for you, man, for a guy that I think when we spoke last, or at least one of the first times that we interviewed you on the show, saying that you were negotiating you were dealing with your own negotiations and things like that.
Your own agent.
It seems like the timing is perfect, dude, because the fact that your contract is ending up, and it just happens that the league is starting to get bitter and a lot more talent is joining the league, and it might just be that perfect timing. I know we talk about like in the NFL, right? The quarterback that's the next up, right, is always the guy that's getting paid the most amount of money. So
it's
I think in that sense, you may have just played your cards exactly right when it comes to this whole North American professional.
Maybe he'll sign the Patrick Mahomes 10-year, $500 million.
That's right, baby.
Yeah, we can't be mentioning that team.
Yeah,
don't
inflate my ego
definitely exactly. But hey, speaking of kind of the growth of the league and move and shifting towards kind of how popular and how prominent the MLR is becoming. I mean, it feels like, and we talked about this all off season long, and it definitely happened even more after we had talked to you last. Just the flurry of international signings and the flurry of players coming overseas to Major League Rugby and looking for playing time here in North America. How exciting is that for you? I know you talk about it, it adds to the growth of the league, but to be able to play against some of these guys that have overseas experience, that have played in New Zealand, have played in these top level leagues, how fun is it for you to look forward to that in 2023 and having that international player pool that you will be going up against?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I always think about it like, what is it? The seven steps to Kevin Costner or something. Everyone is related to Kevin Costner through 7 steps.
Or something like yeah.
Like that. And I'm starting to realize it now because you have friends who know friends who, especially because we have a bunch of teams that know like some of the biggest names in the world. You look at Andy Ellis, and he has Dan Carter on his cell phone. He has like all these big names, and there's other players like that who have played with these big name players. So it's kind of cool that I'm in that realm of, 2 steps away from, my heroes growing up is very interesting to me. So you see all these international guys coming over, and I'm like, oh man, that guy's played with, growing up, Johnny Wilkinson, I loved him. There's probably 1 or 2 people away from that. right?
That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah, yeah. No, I never thought about it like that. Like that's especially when you're bringing in guys like Andy Ellis and Nehe Milner Scudder, guys that have played with some of these top level guys that we're watching on TV. You know what I mean? Like we're watching Super Rugby and we're seeing these guys, and yeah, that's your point. Like just literally 2 steps away from some of those big time guys. Is that the conversation that's being had around players? Like, do you get that sense that like it's guys like Nehe, it's guys like Waisaki Nahalo that are like, hey man, like this Major League Rugby thing, it's a real thing. Like it's if you want to experience something new, if you want to experience North American rugby, even for guys maybe that aren't at that stage, maybe guys that are playing in the NPC Bunnings. We talked about it last show, Matt, about how the timing kind of works perfectly where you have the Bunnings season during basically the off season of Major League Rugby. So guys were able to leave, after finishing the MLR season, go overseas, play a little bit rugby there, and then now come back and sign over here with Major League Rugby teams. Is that the conversation that you're hearing being around those guys, that they're trying to recruit some of those guys overseas? Because it just feels like there's been this flux of players.
Yeah. I think especially the big name guys, everyone wants to come to America because the culture is so sports focused,
Mm-hmm.
and you just think you're the man. And America's just like kind of cool in general for all these overseas guys. You kind of take it for granted as a Canadian. You're like, okay, it's the U.S.
Right.
It's cool, but like it's right there. It's fine. But all these overseas guys just come over and they watch the Hollywood movies, and now they're in Hollywood and like, holy shit, they come to New York and they're like, oh my God, there's nothing like it out there in the world. But the money's not there yet to have all the big name guys come over. But you can hear them talking about it, all the big guys, they want to come over, but the money has to be right for them, right?
For
So
sure.
until it gets to that level, but once it surpasses that level, I think you'll just see a ton of guys make the switch.
Yeah. And I mean, not to put you on the spot, but if you were to put a timeline on that, I mean, you're the guy that's experiencing it firsthand. Like, when do you think that might happen? You know what I mean? 5 years, 10 years? I know that's the $1 million question that everyone's asking right now, but it just the reason why I bring it up is because it just feels like it's been an exponential increase. You know what I mean? If we talk about the beginnings of the MLR, 6 seasons ago, right, where we're starting off with 4 or 5 teams, and then all of a sudden you're talking about big market teams like Chicago, New York that have joined the MLR and now are attracting these big time players. It just feels like it's imminent, and if not, and I don't want to jinx it, if not inevitable, that at some point the money will be there, and at that point, hopefully, have even bigger stars come to the league.
Yeah, I don't know on timing. I couldn't tell you 5 years, 10 years, but
Yeah,
in my opinion, as soon as you get locked down a TV contract, if you can get on DAZN or Amazon Prime or something like that,
Massive.
if you think it's exponential now, it'll tenfold the growth that we've already had. So once that happens, that's when it'll really, really take off.
DAZN would actually be a perfect candidate just because of the way the seasons match up. You go literally from football, boom, MLR starts. That would be even a great segue. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
if that happens, it's game over, and that's
for
when the
sure.
money goes the flood, and that's when you get all these massive big name signings coming over.
With the DAZN, then come betting. Betting is massive in sports. It's no wonder you watch any giant North American sport right now, and you're MGM, FanDuel, it's littered with it, right?
fantasy rugby.
Fantasy rugby.
Yeah, exactly, with that too. But I mean, I guess an interesting point, and you bring up a great point, Co, is that I don't think it's a coincidence that first step, having the introduction of the rugby network, having introduction of kind of these avenues where people have more access. It may be free right now, and maybe not have the advertising money or the broadcasting money coming in as of yet, but at least to have that exposure. I don't think it's a coincidence that the MLR has kind of, in a way, exploded, or at least had its first wave of kind of fans coming in and really kind of taking off, partly in part due to having that access through the rugby network. So yeah, if a broadcasting network like DAZN or any of the major networks picks it up, I think to your point, it's just going to exponentially grow even more. So we can only cross our fingers, because I mean that would only help us, man, from the fantasy rugby standpoint. Is hey, if there's going to be more eyes on it and more the league growing, that's just going to be more access for us in terms of being able to establish fantasy rugby as part of that environment, which we've had a lot of fun doing so far. But hey, enough about talking about the past and talking about the build up to the 2023. I know we mentioned some of the players that we need to look out for this season, but hey, your first matchup is in just over a month away, and it's a big time matchup, a rematch of the MLR 2022 final. You're taking on the Seattle Seawolves in the opening week, and what a matchup to kind of kick off your season. With the build, I know you're still far away from that. You guys got preseason matchups and things like that, but for you to be able to kind of have that opportunity to make a statement right off the get go, how fun is it going to be to take on, I guess, the guys that you faced in that final last season?
Yeah, it'll be good. I think they will definitely want some revenge, so they're going to come out flying. So we got to be ready for that and understand that that's what's going to happen. They're going to want blood in the water. So yeah, it'll be fun. I mean, it's always fun playing. I can think of Nakai out there, my other Canadian buddy. So hopefully he's playing, and it's always good to play against some familiar faces.
Now, not giving too much away, Co. Are you guys? Are there any significant changes that Rugby New York is necessarily making in terms of playing style in the buildup of the 2023 season? I know last year, you guys played an all-around game, more or less. I mean, and you're bringing out some key guys that were just announced. Dylan Fawcett coming back. He was a huge part of that front pack. You bring back Sam Windsor, who was obviously a big key part of that back line. But, with that same finesse kind of style, towards the end of the year, Sam Windsor hitting you with those outside kicks and things like that. Is that still the same mindset of playing fast, playing, that overall type kind of, high-paced, explosive kind of style? Is that what Rugby New York is really working towards? Or what's kind of the you talk about themes and mindsets heading in? What is your guys' kind of theme for the 2023 season?
Yeah, I think it's the same, just building on what we were doing last year. We want to play fun, fast, expansive rugby and put on a show for people who are watching rugby. If you're trying to get someone to come to games, the last thing you want to do is just sit there and you hit maul after maul and then just kick it and then maul after maul and kick it. That's not fun for me as a winger. It's not fun for you sitting in the fans.
Not fun for fantasy rugby players.
Not fun for fantasy rugby players if you're winning a game 1-7,
Yeah,
it's
right. Turn into a slog, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So we're trying to play a fun, expansive game where guys and fans can come and enjoy the game and get excited.
And I'm sure too, like in rugby, when you can have those high flying teams like that, I'm sure never playing the sport, but it's got to put some like external pressure. Like these guys just put up 2 tries in the blink of an eye. How can you combat that if you're a very maul oriented team like Seattle or something?
Yeah. Because if you're down big and you need to put up 2 tries, you're probably not confident doing
exactly. And it changes the game plan. It's no longer, okay, we could just kind of grind our way to a halt here. We gotta figure something out. And that's when mistakes happen and it can turn into a downward spiral.
Exactly, yeah.
I like it.
Hey, to your point though, there was, I don't think, at least last year, there wasn't any really glaring weak points to Rugby New York's game. So to hear that you guys are kind of just improving on that and looking to do even more and make that even better, that's a scary thought, man. We might have teams like the Chicago Hounds on paper. We might have the Seattle Seawolves, who are obviously thirsty for blood in that opening matchup. You got teams like you mentioned, New England Free Jacks, who are good, and I'm sure they'll be coming back hard and fast because of how kind of the season turned around for them as well. And you got guys that are trying to make that next jump. You got teams like San Diego Legion, the Houston SaberCats, those teams as well that are thirsty for stuff too. But hey, you guys are the team. You guys are the team to beat. You guys still hold that 2022 championship. You guys still are the latest team to be taking drinks off the end of the shield and stuff like that. But it's all good. We're excited to see you in this 2023 year, man. I know a lot of our league members are excited to see what Rugby New York has to offer because you guys are so explosive. You guys talk about the game style. I think it really fits with that fantasy rugby type style as well. And I guess to end on a lighter note here, Co, if you had to guess this season, okay, so I believe last year you were taken in the 5th round of our MLR draft. Over under the 5th round, do you think? I remember this is a contract year.
Too high of a line. Over under 3rd round.
Ooh.
I mean,
I don't know what the point system goes through, or ringers high points.
So what we're kind of thinking here, we're still building towards and hopefully having, and we talked about this all off season long, that we're hoping to have more access to stats. As of right now, we're sticking with the same format that we had last year. So it's very tri-centric, especially those big time scores where they're 30 meters plus, 40 meters plus. And we've seen you work your magic sometimes out there. So I know you have an act of doing that over some other wingers that may be in the league. So that may play in your favor. So knowing that it's about scoring tries, do you think that's something that you're going to be able to get done? And you got to sound confident here because you got to convince the league members that you're someone that's got to pick that. Nah, screw Nehe Milner-Scudder, screw Wasaka Noholo. I'm picking Andrew Coe in a contract year to win me a Fantasy Ruckers championship and get their name on this jersey back here. So I'm sure they'll want to be hunting for that top 3.
I think a lot of guys regret not taking me earlier last year. So
that is true. That is very true.
I texted Ryan, and then you got taken that pick.
I guess that's one way to put it. Hey, so let's say under 3 rounds. So you want to be in that top 3. Let's push your draft stock a little bit higher. We got some ranking segments coming up in the near episodes in the future. So we'll see where you fall on that. But I'm sure there'll be a lot of guys that will be itching to pick.
Following along.
Oh man, putting the pressure on. Now I'll be marking down my top 5, and it'll be like, Coach told me last episode, man, that he should you'll be watching it. He should be up there. We'll see though. I'm not gonna let you sway our opinion, okay, Andrew? No matter how much we love you here on this show, I'm not letting that happen. We're a show of the people, but we'll see where you end. But dude, we're super excited for you, man. Super excited for what you have to bring in 2023. I know our very own John Fitzpatrick of Rugby Morning in the league is still waiting for that gritty celebration after the try. I'm not. What?
Everyone's hitting gritty.
That is true now. Now it's a little bit like
hip right now, man.
I don't. You gotta. Maybe we'll have to come up with another one, but we'll see. Nonetheless, I'm sure we'll see you a countless amount of times in the try zone, hopefully. And we're super pumped for you, man, for what you have to bring in 2023. And best of luck in this season. And hey, best of luck to the now Rugby New York Ironworkers. Now that you guys have finally found a name.
Guys, thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure. I'll be on soon.
Yeah,
absolutely, man. Well, we'll definitely keep in touch, dude. And we'll love to have you back on again, maybe during season, and see kind of if your predictions here kind of come true, and you guys are as deadly of a Rugby New York squad as you guys are preparing or make it sound to be. We're super excited to find out. But hey, we'll have you on soon, man. Appreciate your time, dude.
Thanks, guys. Did it.
All right, another great conversation with Andrew Coe. Once again, he never disappoints, man. He always coming in, bringing in the fire. Always fun to talk to him. Had a blast when we chatted with him earlier this week. Lots of interesting stuff that he said there, and obviously we always appreciate the time, like we said at the tail end of the interview, when he comes on this show and gives us a little bit of insight into the world of the MLR, something that us as fans and obviously now fantasy MLR players don't get to kind of get get that insight on a daily basis. So always fascinating to see what he has to say. And he had a lot of interesting stuff to say about the league, about Rugby New York, and about a whole bunch of things that are going on entering the 2023 year.
Yeah, and you know what? I gotta point this out. He's always so clinical. The fact that he just has the ability to have that perfect balance of, cliche answers, the the poised answers of,
He's
he's just putting on a
calculated.
calculated. Yes, that's the word, right? He's calculated, but hey, he can also be a little light and have some fun on our show as well, which is always great to see. But I mean, my first thoughts is, man, this guy looks locked in. Like we're
Hmm.
1 week, I think 1 or 2 weeks into the preseason, and this guy looks locked in. It sounds like the team is locked in. And I they haven't really been to the stadium yet. I don't know how locked in you can be without going to the stadium. I was pretty surprised when he
I
mentioned
was
that.
surprised
But
with
hey,
that. Yeah.
yeah.
No, it
But I
was it
mean, hey,
was
it sounds like they're ready to go for another run.
Yeah, and I mean, hey, like we mentioned in the interview, that you got to be locked in. If your very first matchup to open the season is a rematch against the team that you essentially faced in the final last season, I mean, the Seattle Seawolves are going to be hunting for blood, like we said, and they're going to want
Yep.
revenge on a team that beat them in the
Exactly
biggest
what he
match
said.
of the year. Exactly what he said. So they're obviously prepared for that. Like you said, Matt, they do
Yeah.
seem locked in. Interesting to hear kind of they have that same mindset, the same play style for fantasy players out there, and for our league members. That was an interesting note to take, that Rugby New York is
Mhm.
focused on playing with that same explosive, fun style, and that's only going to benefit fantasy points, especially if we stick with the same stat scoring system that we did
Yeah.
in 2022. That will be something that is
And
something to take of
what
note.
what a take on that by a player, speaking directly about the MLR profits, increasing the exposure of the game by playing expansive rugby, not looking at it from a business lens. Classic guy going to a business
Hey,
school,
contract
looking
here,
at that from a business.
contract here. Hey,
It
that was a
is his
perfect.
contract year.
It was a perfect chance for you to give a shout out to your alma mater,
Hey,
UBC.
you know, hey,
Championship champions of
that
the
is
Canadian
true.
Rugby
That is
Championship.
true. We are a champ. They just beat St. Mary's as well. I don't want to bring it up, but Cal Berkeley didn't even make it to the World Cup boot, whatever it's called. St. Mary's beat them to it, and we beat them too. So might as well call them champions of D1 as well. So it is what
Oh,
it is.
there we
Co
go.
knows it. We know it. It's all good.
But yeah, no, it's super exciting stuff. Like you said, locked in a contract year for
Hmm.
which will provide a lot of motivation for him to obviously perform on the pitch, and that's obviously going to translate on the fantasy level as well. For me, I think what was really interesting, Matt, in that conversation was uh, the inklings and the words and the conversations that are happening within the MLR, and convincing guys coming overseas, and having players being attracted to the idea of playing rugby in North America. And it's funny, and
Yeah.
we mentioned it during the interview as well. It's something I think us in North America kind of take for granted, the how embedded the sports scene is within
True.
North American culture. I mean, obviously, rugby is not on the same level as the Power Four sports like football, like baseball, like basketball, and you can even throw hockey in there as well. But it's
Mhm.
growing and it's getting bigger, and I think when you're able to put an entertaining product on a pitch, people are going to watch. People are going to. I mean, for goodness sake, I mean, you watch ESPN sometimes, and they're playing. They got cornhole playing. They got darts playing. I mean, come on, rugby is a
Whoa,
little
whoa,
bit
whoa!
more
Hold on,
exciting.
hold on. Now darts is electric. All right, darts is absolutely full of electricity.
180.
Exactly. All the time. But
Uh,
look, outside of darts, yeah, cornhole, rugby's got that. Sometimes they even show like these ridiculous other sports that I don't even like. What are we even doing here? Just put some rugby on, get the people watching. Everybody's gonna love it
well,
once they see the hard hits, the expansive rugby that Co's talking about in the MLR. And the more Southern Hemisphere guys that come up to the league, just the more expansive rugby that we're gonna get. And Co seems to love it.
Yeah, no, and I mean, it's really fascinating to hear that conversations are being had. Maybe the finances, like you mentioned, aren't there right now for the MLR
Mm,
to really attract the big names coming over. But the fact that even at this point, when that's not available right now, that there is still conversations being had, and there's obviously people that are making that decision to come over here. I mean, we've seen the flurry, and we mentioned it during the interview, the flurry of moves that happened during this offseason to bring overseas guys over here. It was
yeah.
I think the most that we've seen so far in the MLR, and again, part of that is the increased exposure it's getting, and now being on the Rugby Network and being available for the watch for people. The big deals with now Fox Sports and Fox Sports Two, having those big games there as well. It's very fascinating to kind of hear that, and hopefully
I mean,
it's a sign of good things to come here for the Major League Rugby.
yeah, and he even brought up streaming services. This guy
Mhm.
is thinking business all the time, but I don't know if I fully agree with the streaming
Is there such
services
thing
right
as like a
now.
player
But
CEO? I know a team that we're gonna talk about here in the news a little bit, but is there such thing as a player CEO? Maybe Code could be the
I don't
first one
know.
ever in
Cole
any
Cole
sport.
might be the first. If you just change up the letters of his last name, he's essentially the CEO. It's just spelled differently,
Nice.
right? So,
Nice.
he's yeah, he's ready to go. I might have to just call him CEO Cole at this point moving forward.
All right. Well, hey, we got some news to break down as well, and the first
Yeah.
news I think that we'll start off
Oh,
with. We
hey, we
spoke
have
a
to
lot.
touch on this because Cole touched on this too in the interview, right? Like I think this is the perfect segue of the fact that he's talking about how they got the chance to really keep the team together, right? Like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They
Exactly.
really are pushing to keep the team together. Um, and the fact that they have picked up and re-signed, kept Fawcett, kept Sam Windsor, kept Fuatai, kept the absolute electricity on the sideline of Pago, Haini, right?
Yeah. Yeah, built
Those
up
are
that sideline commentating
mhm,
experience last season as he was going through
yes,
injury. So he's I would say what a dual threat at the very least, both on the pitch and on the TV screen. I know that
yeah,
he has liked some of our content in the past. We always love to see that as well when we get MLR players enjoying the fantasy Rucker stuff that we're putting out. But yeah, you're right. I think we mentioned it in the interview. The return of Dylan Fawcett, the return of Sam Windsor are going to be huge things for Rugby New York and keeping that stability. Obviously, those were not just guys that were on the team, they were key cogs in that MLR championship. Fawcett being a big part of that front pack, also being very, very, very effective when it comes to the fantasy rugby world as well. He was definitely a beneficiary when Rugby New York found themselves quite often in
yep,
the try
yep,
the within the 5 meter area within the
yep.
22, big time lineouts, big time mauls. Him obviously being the guy that typically is getting the most benefit from that, at least from a fantasy perspective and scoring perspective, which translates to a lot of points. And then, of course, we don't have to mention too much about Sam Windsor. That guy was an absolute beast from the tee. Scored a whole bunch of points last season as well. So
Yep.
again, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch them again return and have hopefully that same effectiveness from a fantasy perspective, because guys will be hunting for them in this upcoming draft of ours. And then you throw in Fuatai. Obviously, when you're a part of a backline that's as explosive as Rugby New York, you're going to want a piece of that. And he was definitely a guy that was definitely you weren't disappointed with having on your roster, your
No,
fantasy
he
roster.
was definitely a guy that you wanted and wished you had on your fantasy roster. I mean, they bring back. I'm pretty sure they're bringing back Emery. They can bring back the two center pairing. It's just things seem to be lining up for Rugby New York to just have another go with those signings. It's even more so.
Yeah,
But another thing that
a
I
lot of
kind of
stability.
yeah, 100%. The other thing that I want to talk about, and this is a little bit related to also, I realize a little bit to what Code talked about of bringing big overseas guys. I
Mhm.
don't think we talked about this enough in over Christmas because we kind of missed it over the holiday break. We
Sure.
didn't really get a chance to talk about it in the new year because there's a lot to catch up on. But Kurt Baker, New Zealand 7-star, signing with Old Glory DC. We never talked about it, but like that is just the trickle effect and kind of I guess one of those big names that you're seeing coming over to the MLR. Yeah, maybe the money's not here yet, but this guy's already seeing the potential in the MLR, seeing the potential for him to come to 15s, play some 15s, and show off his skill in DC. So I'm super excited for that. I think that's a huge addition. That's also really big for the league to bring in a guy who's known worldwide across both the sevens, maybe not the 15s, but he's about to make a name for himself in this league.
Well, hey, that's where Ko began. Ko made a name for himself on the seventh
That
circuit,
is
and
true.
he made the transition too, and he's doing quite fine. So it'll definitely be interesting to see what Kurt Baker is able to do with Old Glory DC, because it's possible. I mean, especially with the level of skill that the MLR has, you have the ability to make that transition easier. It'd be much harder if Kurt Baker, let's say, was trying to get himself onto a super rugby team or something like that. Obviously,
Yeah.
it'd be much more difficult to make that transition, but having the using the MLR as a stepping stone, that's exactly
Mm.
what this league is here
I
for.
mean,
And
yeah,
interesting
and
to
he's
see
he's
how,
had he's had his fair share of Bunnings caps, I'm sure. I think he played for the Magpies. I forget, but he's definitely had his fair share of caps for Bunnings. Obviously, hasn't has as much experience as some of the guys who just focus on 15s. But yeah, he'll come in here. It'll be just another day in the office for the guy. I can't wait to watch him play. Loved watching him on sevens. Now I get to watch him, every Saturday, Sunday this year. So yeah, I'm excited.
and I know Old Glory DC, they could definitely they want to make improvements heading into this 2023 year. I mean, take a look at kind of how they were last year in terms of back three players. I'm just having a look here on the rankings. But they're using guys I'm trying to look here with some winger players here on the Old Glory DC team. Doug Fraser was a name that came
Yep.
about. We're
Penny
looking at
Lasaka.
Penny Lasaka. Yep. So guys
Yep.
that are
And your
definitely
Sal.
so, you're starting to build up. We talk about powerful backlines and things like that. It really starts with that explosive name, especially if you're going to keep up teams with Rugby New York and even the Chicago Hounds on paper, at least. You're going to need
Yeah.
to kind of sign those guys. So, yeah, Kurt Baker will definitely be a big part of that. Matt, would you suggest, knowing that, let's say he's in the starting lineup on a regular basis, obviously, is he someone that you're hunting for within those first few rounds? I know Ko mentioned that he wants to be at least in the top 3 rounds. I think he got drafted
Ugh,
within the top
yeah.
5 last season, and it was an absolute steal for that, at least for the part when he was on the field, dealt with some injury issues, but nonetheless was still effective when he's on there. And then you talk about him in the playoff challenge as well. Went absolutely crazy there. So can a player like Kurt Baker make that transition? Is he someone you're looking for in fantasy rugby?
Look, I mean, first of all, let's just touch on the quick Ko thing. Ko's going top 3 rounds, no brainer. Like that's not even second guessing. But Kurt Baker, you know, he's definitely going to be on my board. I'm definitely going to look at him. Like we've seen these guys come in, especially the fact that he's a well-known name. It's somebody that I'm willing to take a chance on. Whether everybody else wants to take a chance on, who knows? There's so much depth this year that you can really it's hard to make a wrong decision this year. It's harder to make a wrong decision. Trust me, I'm going to make
Sure.
my fair share of wrong decisions, but it's definitely harder to make a wrong decision this year with the amount of depth that we have in this league this
Yeah, I mean, hey, we talked about volatility, and we talked about how, especially with the scoring format that we used in 2022, it's tough to
year.
predict some of these guys. All you can do is hedge your bets on guys that have that opportunity to score. And if Kurt Baker uses that same athleticism that he's shown on the seventh circuit, I'm sure he's going to have no hard time finding the try zone in this 2023 season. So yeah, it'll be interesting. What's fascinating, Matt, is that it's going to be an interesting dynamic between, especially with the influx of foreign players that haven't played in the MLR yet,
Yeah.
and haven't made that first appearance. Is going to be an interesting one, because it's kind of similar to last year, where last year it was our first fantasy season, so you had no baseline to kind of go off of in terms of who is going to
Mhm.
be someone that fits our kind of fantasy ethos and really be dominant within that space. We definitely were able to find out those types of guys. We talked about Bodine Waka.
Oh yeah.
We talk about Reichert Hadding. We talk about, AJ Alatimu, guys that are just like really, really ball possessive heavy, control the possession, have scoring opportunities, all these things. For guys like Kurt Baker and other foreign guys that obviously have the skill, are you going to have the wherewithal and the toughness to make those picks despite not having any of that past MLR experience? Is going to be an interesting dynamic, I think, as we get
Oh yeah.
closer to the draft. And again, we'll tease that at the end of the show, but we're going to be revealing our top 5 rankings at each position, and it'll be interesting to see how many of those positions are going to include guys that have not yet made appearance in the MLR, because there might be a couple that sneak in there, but we'll have to see. moving on here to some other roster moves, kind of reverse ways. We've obviously talked about the guys that have been coming in, and I should say that I think James Dealey does appreciate that the roster moves are starting to slow down a little bit. There was a point during
Hey,
the off season
yeah.
where it was nuts. You're talking about like 3 pages of
Two,
roster moves.
3, 4, 5
Exactly.
pages. This guy's working, but hey, he's not taking any time off. I don't know if you follow me, you can see some of the ridiculous tweets that I make, but like some of his designs and definitely give him a follow because some of the graphics that he's coming up with is just starting to get ridiculous. I mean, they are just, they're moving now. They're not just static. Now they're moving.
They're
They're moving
animated.
all
Yep.
over the place. They're animated. They're gifs or gifs. They're everything, and they're moving. They're showing over year, over time, over the months. This guy is just absolutely killing it. The time that he spent on those 3, 4, 5 page roster moves. Now he's just taking all that time, taking all that
Sure.
expertise, throwing it into some of these moving graphs. Probably has some moving graphs preparing himself for the season. So, you know,
Yeah. No,
I
it's
mean,
it's
it's a
interesting,
scary
but yeah,
sight.
again, rely heavily on this guy's
Oh yeah,
content, and love to have him now. Having him in our Fantasy Ruckers League is awesome. But yeah, like we said, we referred to his stuff for these roster moves to keep us up to date. Again, you can follow him on Twitter at JamDelay, and on Instagram at MLR Stats. But yeah, obviously we talked about the signings on his most recent post with the Rugby New York signings, but there are a lot of signings on that post that are moving
Mm,
away from the MLR and actually going to a team that old MLR fans will probably be familiar with, and that is the Glendale Raptors. I think we had a total of 3 different players in this past week
yeah,
move to the Glendale Raptors who are now competing in the Super Rugby Americas League. They just rebranded themselves, and now including the Glendale Raptors in there. For those of you who don't know, for those of you that are just starting to follow the MLR, Glendale was a former team within the MLR and then kind of disconnected itself and decided to go in a different direction. But nonetheless, we do have some player movement to that team competing in a league that I wouldn't say is competing necessarily with the MLR because it's still, I think, mostly
no.
it is mostly South American based. But nonetheless, it is interesting to see guys making that decision to go to Glendale.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, we don't see this often of guys moving out of the MLR to another North American team. We haven't seen that this year. And with Glendale Raptors joining the I know you call it Super Rugby Americas, but I'm gonna keep calling it the Solar. The Solar, the guys that moving over to that league. I think it's interesting. It's interesting to see how this is going to be, maybe impact the dynamics. Maybe guys are looking for more competition in the Solar versus the MLR. But I don't know. The MLR is looking like they're generating a lot of talent. They're pulling in a lot of talent. But South America rugby is just growing and
Yeah.
consistently growing. And their type of rugby is just exciting all the time. You look at guys like Argentina, you look at Portugal, you look at all these Portugal. Portugal's not in South America.
Portugal is not in South America, but it was a nice
Portugal's
try.
not in South America. But you look at Argent. What a ridiculous statement by Matt. See, that's what you can expect. You look at Argentina, you look at Uruguay, you can look at Chile. Ryan fact
I
checking
just I
Chile.
want to keep letting you
Ryan
go
Chile, you got to confirm this with me, Ryan.
until you run out of South American countries.
Come on, confirm Chile with me.
I think Chile is
Chile's
in South
there,
America.
you
Yeah.
know. But yeah, I mean, you're looking at the South American game, and it's growing. Argentina's competing with the top teams in the world, and you got the Jaguares in there in that league as well. Um,
Uh,
so yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how players are moving between the two leagues. Whether we're really expecting to see players moving between the two leagues, um, it'll be interesting to see because we have not had another professional North American team in a different league than the MLR, and this will be the first season that we have that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the Glendale Raptors signing Diego Fortuny from the Houston Sabercats,
Yep.
Dominic Iokovinko from the San Diego Legion, and then Siaki Vikilani as well from the Toronto Arrows. He shipped in over to Glendale as well. But yeah, it should be interesting to see. I know, Matt, there was a little bit of talks that there could possibly be a Vancouver team that was going to join
Yep.
the Super Rugby Americas. Nothing panned out from that. I know you have been a big proponent proponent, and I know Co has also been a big proponent of bringing the MLR to Vancouver. So I couldn't imagine
Oh
how
yeah.
disappointing it would have been if it was Super Rugby Americas that beat the MLR to the punch and adding that team. So there's still a little bit of time, Matt. There's still a little bit of time
Mm,
to hopefully one day bring in a Vancouver squad into the MLR. But
yeah.
yeah, kind of sticking with the whole Argentinian theme. This is not from a player standpoint, but like you mentioned, Matt, there is a lot of Argentinian influence, it seems, that is entering the league, both from a player level and from a management level as well. And that includes the I believe the one of the owners or the owner that's kind of fronting the whole
Yeah.
initiative of trying to get the Miami Sharks. If you guys haven't
Ugh,
heard, there has been inklings about the Miami Sharks becoming the 13th team in the MLR. Not for this season, but it looks like somewhat in the near future. It looks like that the executive who is running that by the name of Marcos Galperin is, I believe, also Argentinian, and he is looking for a CEO. And Matt, you mentioned Code just reversing his letters and his name to maybe do that. Maybe this is an opportunity, contract year, to become that first ever
Yoko.
player, uh,
Yep.
player CEO mix with that Sauder business school background from UBC. But nonetheless, interesting that we are seeing development when it comes to this Miami Sharks franchise. It's
Yeah.
incredible to think that, at you look back half a year ago and what MLR was going through and losing two teams, now really rebounding very quickly and adding the Chicago Hounds and now adding the Miami Sharks potentially in the near future is a reassuring thing for the league.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder what kind of conversations they're having with Mr. Killebrew in the league already. Like, if they're looking for a CEO, they must be pretty confident that they're going to be a team in the league, right? So there has to be some conversation that's going on there. We've seen this with Dallas Jackals, the hiring of South American staff, South American executives. We see the influence that it has on the roster makeup. So when we do see Miami in the MLR, we can kind of have an image of what we expect their team to kind of be made up of. And again, it kind of adds to that competition between the MLR and the Solar. Like, we're fighting for the same almost player pool, it seems like. But yeah, this is exciting stuff. You hope that things are moving, conversations being had. Um, we can continue to generate more talent. And you know what? Another thing about Miami, players are gonna love to go to Miami.
Yeah, they
Players are
are.
gonna love going to Miami. Like, who wouldn't want to go to my yes, it's in Florida. We get it. But like, it's also in Florida, Miami. Players will love to go. Big time players might want to go. We're just talking about that earlier, Rye. I mean, if there's a big time place for big time players to go, Miami's a spot.
It is true. I mean, you're talking about adding big cities to the league. We've recently, like Rugby New York was not added too long ago. You know what I mean? Now adding Chicago in the
Yeah.
mix as well, which is huge. Yeah, adding these big cities is only going to attract more players. A lot of fun stuff. Hey, what's the deal with rugby teams naming themselves the Sharks though? I feel like the Sharks is one of the most common rugby franchises out there. You got the Sale
Yeah.
Sharks. You got the
Yep. The
you got the
Durban,
the
the
Durban the
Durban
Durban
Sharks.
Sharks. Now you got the Miami
Yeah.
Sharks. It's just it's
Look,
it's funny.
I would have done something a little bit cooler. I came up with the whole Chicago Churros. That's way better than the Hounds. The Miami Sharks. I don't know what I can come up with on spots. I was trying to think of something that starts with an M, but we'll see. We'll see. I'll come up with something
I
good, and maybe
I
maybe I'll go for that CEO position. Who knows if I can come up with a good enough name?
Yeah, get that application in, Matt, and then we'll get our inside scoop through you when it comes
Yeah.
to the MLR executives. But yeah, hey, and it looks like also that they're going to side, and it obviously makes sense with the whole Miami Vice type colors and scheme and things, which would be
Oh, they
awesome to see.
better.
I mean, it would obviously be
Right.
very similar to the former LA Guiltinis because they kind of had that Miami
Whatever.
Vice,
I don't
but it
even
makes more
I don't
sense,
even know what that team is anymore.
right? But
I've blocked them out. They're just Chicago Hounds now.
and I mean, it's more fitting that it is actually a Miami team now that is going to embrace that. So
Yes.
it's going to be cool stuff. And then now I guess talking about logos, talking about colors, talking about kind of how teams look out on the pitch. Teams have been releasing jerseys throughout the off
Yes.
season of their kits for the 2023 year. The most recent this week, at least, the NOLA Golds announcing that they're going to be returning with the same jerseys that they did in
Ryan.
2022, the classic
Ryan,
gold
why they
kind
got
of
to do this to us,
Harlequin
man?
Harlequin style jersey. What?
Why they got to do this to us?
You said
You
it. If
coulda-
it's
you-
good,
and
if
look,
it's good, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
yeah, but that was broke, Ryan. That was broke. It was broke, Ryan. Like,
Uh,
look, and we talked about this last week, right? And we talked about this Vandy off the show too. We are noticing that teams are taking chances. We're looking at the Legion. We're looking at even the Utah Warriors. They're taking chances. Rugby New York is, taking chances in the wrong direction, but they're taking chances. And Nola Gold here is sitting here doing the exact same things last year when they could have, explore a little, just try something. But yeah, I guess to them, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But to me, it looked pretty broke.
Yeah, I mean, when you're called the gold, I feel like it's tough to kind of pull ideas and get creative with that. Who knows? But
Yeah,
yeah, we'll see. Again, it's the same kind of Harlequin look in jersey. The I believe the one kit, the dark kit being the gold on each corner and the black, and then you alternate that black with the white. That's what Nola's coming out with. Yeah, like you mentioned, we were able to have a conversation with Vandy off camera about some of the jerseys. We kind of played a little trick on him. I think for listeners and viewers that have been watching for a long time, we know that the community and the people chose Vandy to be a Utah Warriors fan. He even
yeah.
got a Utah Warriors training jersey sent to him by our very own league member, Stephen Lowen, as well, and sent him to a Utah Warriors jersey. So the fandomship and the investment into the Utah Warriors is certainly there. But I feel like he's kind of, and you probably noticed this as listening,
Deep
it
down,
seems like he's in the closet San Diego Legion
yes.
fan. So
But
Matt and myself,
we got to
yeah,
give it to him. We got to give it to him though. He stayed loyal throughout this. We
he
tried
did.
to play
He
him.
did.
We tried
We
to play
tried to
him,
play him.
and he stayed loyal.
We thought maybe, and if you can hear our live reactions last episode about our reactions to the San Diego Legion jersey, we absolutely love those. The Trojan helmet on the side, the Kings and Convicts sponsor in the middle. It works so perfectly. And I have to say, I'm a pretty big fan of the Utah Warriors jersey as well, especially that alternate jersey. Matt likes the white ones. And when we tried to convince Vandy and showed them side by side, he stuck with his boys, and he said that, hey, I am a Utah Warriors fan through and through, and you got to give that guy
Hey,
props that
you
he
got to give
he
him
stuck with
props
his
in
guys.
Utah. You got a good one over here. You better do what you got to do to keep him as a fan because, in my opinion, he's, one bad jersey away from just moving right over to Big Joe over there in San Diego Legion.
I guess we'll say, and to finish off the jersey conversation, I will say that he definitely did not like the Seattle Seawolves jersey. I'm indifferent kind of on those ones.
Yeah, but
He didn't like the Chicago
he,
Hounds one. We had the reaction, very simple
fair
stuff,
enough.
not very creative.
But
And
he liked the New
I think
York one. So can we really
right.
trust his opinion?
Yeah, and for those of you who haven't seen the Rugby New York jersey, he's got the bridge. I'm pretty sure it's the Brooklyn Bridge
It is the Brooklyn Bridge. Yeah.
on the jersey there. I personally like the Liberty statue more in their last year's jersey, but nonetheless, to each his own. Matthew, not a big fan. Vandy liking it a little bit more. But hey, it's really exciting to see that that these jerseys are coming out. It gets your taste buds going that the 2023 season is really just around the corner, which is super fun stuff. And speaking about being just around the corner. The 2023 season is just around the corner, which means the fantasy season is just around the corner. And we got to give people some updates here with how the official Fantasy Ruckers League is moving forward right here. Lots of super exciting stuff. We mentioned last episode, we're working down on that draft date for our league members, but to give our viewers and what they can expect over the coming weeks, got a lot of stuff lined up and it's going to be super fun. We teased it a little bit earlier, just moments ago, but we will start to break down the top 5 position or top 5 players at each position from a fantasy perspective. That's key here. From a fantasy perspective, going into the 2023 year, I think our league members will appreciate. Whether or not they agree will be a whole different other story. But I think it will be a good reference point in terms of when people start looking at their draft prep, start looking at who they're targeting in that draft, and seeing what positions do they value, what top 5 guys they're really going for. It's going to be interesting. So next week's episode, our big number 50, which is crazy to think, Matt. The fact that we've done 50 episodes coming up this week is
I
insane.
can't believe the forwards, Ryan. The forwards are getting to be part of our 50. Is that the type of show that we run here, Ryan?
spoken like a true scrum half. But yes, we are going to be breaking down the top 5 forward positions in our 50th episode. We're going to go through the
What a lucky group of
we're going to
guys.
we're going to go through front row positions, second row positions, back row positions, and then maybe even an overall forward flex position, who our top 5 guys is out of all the forwards are. The following week in episode 51, we're going to break down the back positions: scrum half, fly half, back 3, and then back flex. And then it's all about draft prep. We got a draft preview episode, going to break down everything that people need to know heading into that draft. And then we'll obviously be live stream once we got a date solidified for with our league members. We are going to be live streaming that just like we did last year on YouTube. People will want to tune in to see who is picking who, where are players going, because I mean, if anyone out there, if you're listening, plays fantasy sports, you know that quite often the best players in the real world are not necessarily the best players from a fantasy perspective, especially with the volatility and scoring format that we are approaching to use. We're still working to see if we can get more stats involved, but nonetheless, it's going to be interesting to see what guys kind of are in those top few rounds, who maybe are the sleeper picks this year. Because I think the one thing that we do know is that there's a whole lot more information, at least from a fantasy perspective, especially being one season into this, that people are going to be going off of. And it's not just about the straight numbers. It's about the guys that you watched last season. It's about when you watched it through the lens of fantasy MLR, who really popped off the screen. And I think that's going to have an interplay with it. I also think what's going to have an interplay too, and you know this, Matt, playing fantasy football and other fantasy sports, that you get a certain personal attachment to certain players, and you want to be like, oh, like I really, really want that guy. And I know Vandy, and he mentioned it in the episode, in the interview, that he wasn't happy that he wasn't able to draft Andrew Coe, and I'm sure it's just gonna make him want to
And he's
draft
going to be
Andrew Coe
gunning
even
for
more.
Co. Oh
Right.
yeah, and he's gunning for Co. I'm gonna let him overpay for Co if that's even possible. But you know, and to lead into a kind of a disclaimer for the people, just so they know what to expect. You're not part of the league, Ryan. You're the commissioner. Your opinions are kind of neutral. They're not biased. You're not trying to sway anybody in any directions. Me, you never know with me. Sometimes I'm coming in flying hot with maybe I'm just throwing smoke screens out there. You guys never know. But no, these next 3 episodes, at least these next 3 episodes, I'm gonna be for the people. You guys can have a little look inside this brain of mine, figure out whether you want to listen to it. Most of the members from last year are going to know that they don't want to listen to it, but you new guys, you'll have to make that choice for yourself.
Absolutely. So yeah, exciting stuff coming up in the next few weeks when it comes to fantasy MLR here on the Fantasy Ruckers Show. And again, then we're right into the season, man, and it is routine from there. We know how to get it done. It's all about breaking down the games, breaking down what we're looking ahead to the next week, talking about those waiver wire pickups. It's going to be hilarious, Matt, to see. Draft day is going to happen right, like a few days or a week at most before the opening weekend, and there are going to be guys that were drafted very, very early, that after that first week, there are going to be people sweating and be like, oh my gosh, I got to pick up this guy, especially with all the foreign signings.
Yeah.
I got to pick up this guy. I got to pick up this guy. There's going to be some pretty big knee-jerk reactions, especially as commissioner who can watch from that outside perspective looking in. It's going to be funny to see all the craziness that is going to go on, especially after that first week. So just lots and lots to look forward to when it comes to this upcoming fantasy MLR season.
Oh yeah. And it never stops from here to the end of the season and beyond. We ain't stopping. We just keep rolling along, and you better be with us.
Especially, and you want to be with us on social media too, because like we said earlier in the show, we have been working hard to try to get fantasy MLR to as many people as possible. Still in the works, still working hard, but as soon as we're able to do that, we're going to let you know, and we're going to blast that out on our social media channels at Fantasy Ruckers on Twitter, at the Fantasy Ruckers on Instagram. You can also give Matt and myself a follow at Yee95, at Ryan J. Yee. We're definitely going to say something about it when that becomes a possibility as well. And then, of course, it'll be in our Discord community as well that people will want to be a part of, to kind of get the insight when it comes to fantasy MLR and how it's been operating over the first year and into our second year. So it's going to be super fun stuff. Can't wait for this season, man. I mean, it's pretty crazy to think that the 2023 season is already here. It feels like the off season absolutely blew by. yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun stuff. And like we said, there's a lot of interesting content to come out here in the few weeks leading up to that. And it's really not going to stop until that championship shield is lifted in 2023.
Oh, yeah. And I can't wait.
Sweet. All right. Wait, like we said, we'll be back next week for episode number 50. That's
Woo!
right. Episode number 50, breaking down the top 5 forwards at each position, going to help our league members, or maybe not help them. Maybe they're smoke screens. We don't know. Matt Yee is playing the mind games here, and he's getting the strategies all set and locked and loaded to play with the minds of our league members. But we'll come out. You'll get a reliable top 5 from me. Matt, we'll see what you come out with, and I think people will be able to realize pretty quickly. But hey, you're pretty on point with the waiver wire pickups last season, so I think we have to give you the benefit of the doubt.
Hey, I mean, only one way to find out. Y'all come back now, you hear?
There we go. All right, for Matt Yee, I'm Ryan Yee. Also for Devin Vandy Vanderpool, we'll see you for episode number Big 50 next week. See you then.
Love you, Van.
You've been listening to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, covering everything rugby from the MLR and beyond. We hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review, and be sure to tell all your friends. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, connect with us on social media at the Fantasy Ruckers. Till next time, this is the Fantasy Ruckers Show, signing off.